What's going on, you guys? It's your boy Patrick, aka Addicted to Combat, back for another week of fights at long last. It has been a while, and now we've got UFC Fight Night Orlando, a potential 5-round welterweight bout between Stephen Wonderboy Thompson and Kevin Holland. Very fun matchup with a lot of pay-per-view worthy fights on this card in general. Right now we got 15 fights to go through, so I'll be very concise with some of these breakdowns, just get to the point, because you guys know I could ramble all day about these fights. But on Thursday night, I'll be having my live stream on Thursday night this week at 5:30 Central Time p.m. With my boy Cody from Blood Money MMA Bets. So we'll get into the nitty-gritty of these fights, a little bit more analysis. From a betting perspective, we'll have the props out at that point as well. And we'll be talking bets and how these fights will play out at a deeper level. Go back and forth there. But yeah, it was a fun time. Last time we spoke at the Fight Companion stream for what was supposed to be Lewis versus Spivak fight night. The main event got canceled partway through the prelims, and we had the main event of Cutelaba versus Nzetriku instead. So I had a lot of parlays going for that Fight Companion stream that a lot of you guys joined me and my boys with for the entire time. It was fun. The parlays paid out, but it would have been a lot more if we had a main event spot adding to those parlays. So it was a profitable night for me. So was the last pay-per-view, UFC 281. So let's try to make this 3 winning UFC events in a row, finish the year off strong. And again, hit the like, hit the subscribe. Let's keep the channel growing. I appreciate all of you guys for your constant love and support. And check out BetUS Sportsbook, who I'm partnered with. Use the promo code AddictedToCombat125 for a 125% deposit match bonus when you deposit at least $100 in the sportsbook, all the way up to $2,500. Free money to gamble with. And without further ado, let's talk about these 15 fights at UFC Fight Night Orlando. Kicking off the night, we've got a very fun women's strawweight bout at 115 between Yasmin Jauregui, making her second walk to the UFC, taking on Estela Nunes, who is making her third walk to the UFC. So these two women were supposed to have fought back at UFC San Diego in August. Nunes had pulled out for an injury, so Yasmin Jauregui had to make her debut against Yasmin Lucindo, who was also making her debut that night. And they had a very, very fun fight back and forth. Striking battle. You could tell Yasmin Lucindo wanted to get the fight to the mat and avoid getting outstruck by Yasmin Jauregui in the feet. But Yasmin Jauregui showed very good defensive wrestling there, stuffed all of the takedowns, I think landed one of her own, but mostly they had a fun stand-up battle where Yasmin Jauregui dominantly won most of the exchanges on the feet, long-rangey strikes, good combinations, and very good durability as well. When she did get hit, she was not very much affected by those strikes. She would just bite down on her mouthpiece, plant her feet, and answer back with very good footwork and combinations. So 9-0 record for the 23-year-old from Mexico, Yasmin Jauregui. She is now a very sizable favorite, upwards of -300 at this point. Estela Nunes, who has been in the UFC twice now, lost both of those bouts. Yasmin is a -300 favorite. Estela Nunes about a +255 underdog. So Nunes is 6-3 record. Again, 0-2 in the UFC, losing bouts to Sam Hughes and to Ariane Carnelossi. So the Carnelossi one, not that bad of a loss, honestly. Carnelossi, of course, very strong and physical girl. She was able to take down Estela Nunes and eventually get a round 3 rear naked choke. Sam Hughes was able to weather the storm of Estela Nunes in round 1, wait until Nunes slowed down in rounds 2 and 3, and employed her own wrestling game. So that really is the kryptonite. Estela Nunes is going to be in heaven here, finally getting a match in the UFC that's a striker versus striker matchup. So I'm not quite sure why this money line is so wide in the favor of Yasmin Jauregui. Yes, she had a very impressive debut against somebody else making their debut, but Estela Nunes is a former kickboxer, very good power in her hands for 115, and uses flurries of very powerful hooks up close, and she can be a clean technical striker at distance, but if she gets pressured, she'll start brawling, kind of leaving her chin up in the air, but she's very confident in her power. So this, for a women's 115 fight, it's shocking that there's such a big disparity in the money line here, and it doesn't give me much to do with for Yasmin Jauregui at -300 or more on the money line. She does have 4 TKOs all in round 1. Estela Nunes has some on the regionals as well. I think this fight does go to decision here. I don't think either fighter is going to finish the other at women's 115. But the two necessary things in this matchup are Yasmin Jauregui's toughness, which she showed, and her pace and cardio that she showed in her last fight back in August. So because of those two qualities, those are things I don't see in Estela Nunes, especially the cardio. I'm going to take Yasmin Jauregui to once again, make this a very clean, technical kickboxing match and get the better of all of the striking exchanges here. I don't think she stops Nunes, but I think she does have some sneaky grappling she could employ against Nunes, who's shown that that's her weakness. So give me Yasmin Jauregui pretty confidently to win this fight, but I'm not minus 300 confident, and there's no bet for me on this fight. Up next at featherweight, we've got Francis Marshall making his debut in the UFC, 23-year-old prospect, taking on Marcelo Rojo, who is 11 years his senior and 0-2 in the UFC. So both guys are in the same boat as far as looking for their first win in the division at featherweight. We've got Francis Marshall, a minus 165 favorite for the 6-0 undefeated professional so far, plus 145 underdog on Marcelo Rojo, who's 16-8 as a professional. And Marcelo Rojo is very exciting. I mean, the guy was on The Ultimate Fighter back, I think, like 6 years ago. I think Claudio Puelles actually eliminated him from the house. And then Marcelo Rojo went to Combate, where he went 6-2 as a professional there. All 6 of the wins in the promotion were round 1 stoppages. Both of the losses were round 3 submissions. So that has kind of been a telltale sign of his fight style, right? Good boxing early, fast starter, gets into wars, and could end the fight in round 1, but he slows down and fades by round 2 and round 3. The takedowns are pretty easy on him, and Charles Jourdain was able to outstrike him in round 3, finish him, and Kyler Phillips, most recently this year in February, was able to ground him in round 3 and get a submission victory there. So I think the most danger against Francis Marshall is going to be trading with Marcelo Rojo at boxing range early. That'll be the most dangerous part of the fight. And Rojo has a very good chance of finishing the fight there. I saw Francis Marshall is very hittable, a little bit too confident and eager to exchange and brawl in round 1 before going to what Marshall is the best at here is the wrestling. He's since 14, Francis Marshall has been training under the guidance of Kurt Pellegrino, a UFC veteran, and he actually went into wrestling in high school just to complement his BJJ and mixed martial arts hobby outside of school. So I think it was Kurt Pellegrino's idea. Get him some wrestling, get him some experience outside of the MMA gym, and now Marshall is a very good takedown threat. 6 takedowns in his Dana White Contender Series victory over Connor Matthews this year. So that's going to be the game plan. I just hope he goes to it early and doesn't risk getting knocked out by Rojo or losing round 1. So what I like in this bout is the live bet for Francis Marshall after round 1. Again, you risk not getting that minus 165 on the money line pre-flop on Marshall, and you risk him being an even bigger favorite if he wins round 1 dominantly. But yeah, I think Rojo's going to show the best threat early. After that, maybe we get closer to even money, or maybe even plus money on Francis Marshall if he loses round 1. But after that, I think Marcelo Rojo starts to fade, gives up the takedowns, and eventually Marshall has a very slick back take, and he'll look for the rear naked choke, of which he has, I think, 4 of those out of his 6 wins. So give me Marshall by round 3 submission, rear naked choke. No bet on this fight for now, but I'll keep a look on where the money line is headed this week. Maybe look at some submission props for Marshall. And I do like that live bet for Marshall after round 1, where there's the most danger. Moving up to 155, we've got Natan Levy taking on Genaro Valdez. Both guys very new to the UFC. This is Levy's 3rd fight, and Valdez's 2nd fight. Both guys have pretty weak resumes, I would say, because they came into the Contender Series, got an impressive win, and then made their way to the UFC that way. Natan Levy at least was 5-0 in the LFA, some close decisions, but he is a karate-based fighter, in pretty good shape at 31 years old, 5'9", pretty decent for featherweight and now lightweight. And he does have jiu-jitsu in his back pocket as well. So if he gets taken down, can't strike that karate style, he is dangerous off of his back. And he threatens with submissions to get back to his feet and keep striking. So I like that about Natan Levy. Pretty good pace. Seems to have a decent cardio about him. Now on the opposite side, Gennaro Valdez, also 30 years old and 5'9" at the weight class. This guy has never been to the scorecards before and fights like an absolute wild person. And as such, he did get dropped like 4 times, knocked down about 4 or 5 times against Matt Frevola earlier this year in his debut, and lost that fight, his first professional loss. Now, even that loss was under 1.5 rounds. 9 of his 10 wins as a professional have all ended under 1.5 rounds. So he gets himself into deep water pretty quickly. Tries to employ striking and grappling, gets into crazy scrambles in all aspects of a fight very early, sometimes losing the fight before he finally pulls victory out of the jaws of defeat. And he's a plus 160 underdog here. Natan Levy, the minus 185 favorite. Not sure how much I agree with that, just because there's a lot to be proven about both guys, their durability, their cardio on either side. But knowing that Valdez has never been to the scorecards and knowing that he fights at one pace, which is 100 miles an hour, I really want to bet the fight doesn't go to decision, or the under 2.5, which is at minus 155. Not a bad price for an under 2.5 when, like I said, Valdez barely makes it past 1.5 rounds at all. So this is a spot where I'd probably, since it's a one-sided bet on the under, I'm not too concerned about Levy. He's been a decision half of his fights. I'd put like 1 unit on the minus 155 just because it's just hard to pass up for a killer-be-killed Gennaro Valdez. But ultimately, I will pick Natan Levy to win this fight. I think he wins by round 2 submission, if I had to call it. I've seen Valdez get in some pretty bad scrambles and in danger of getting submitted by some low-level opponents on the regional scene. Levy does have a pretty slick takedown threat himself, good single leg, some good back takes off the clinch, things like that. So if Levy can get Gennaro Valdez tired, weather the early storm, I think Valdez will just be putty in his hands to either get TKO'd or get submitted. So a guy with three submissions on his record, Natan Levy, I'll take him to win this fight. No money line bet on either side. I want to learn about these guys, but I will probably take that under 2.5. Up next at women's flyweight, a very competitive, close matchup between two young top 15 flyweights here. We got Tracy Cortez versus Amanda Ribas at 125. Very close matchup, and the odds do predict that as well. Minus 105 for Cortez, the slight underdog. Slight favorite, Amanda Ribas, minus 115. They both have very similar records as well. Cortez with 11-1 record, only ever losing her debut in Invicta as a pro. She lost by submission a long time ago. Since then, she's been on an 11-fight win streak. We got Amanda Ribas, 11-3 record, and she's lost a couple in the UFC, including her most previous matchup against Katlyn Chookagian. It was a split decision, could have gone either way because you had a mix of Amanda Ribas, the BJJ artist and judo player, getting judo throws, securing top control time. I think about 6 minutes of control time over 15 minutes, but she got outstruck decisively in rounds 1 and rounds 2. So the judges had to weigh effective striking and grappling, and they had a disagreement, but Katlyn Chookagian got the nod that night. I think that was back in May at this point. So Amanda Ribas getting back in there. I thought it was a very good performance. She showed pretty good strength on the ground. Tracy Cortez, she's coming over a decision win over Melissa Gatto, a very powerful striker, but not an experienced one in the UFC. And Cortez just needs the takedown. She's a very good wrestler. She needs the takedowns. She only has a 1 KO and 1 submission out of her 11 wins. The rest are all by decision. So that tells you everything you need to know right there about if this fight is slated to go the distance or not. Probably going to go the distance. Whoever wins this fight probably wins by a very close decision. And Cortez, I think, she has the fundamental striking to get the job done on the feet if it stays there, but her cardio doesn't seem to be as good as Amanda Ribas. Her aggression, her hand speed doesn't seem to be as good as Amanda Ribas, in my opinion, although I do think her technique is better. If Cortez can make any sort of improvement in the striking after getting outstruck by Melissa Gatto whenever the fight was there, hopefully that was a slap in the face, a wake-up call, improve your striking technique, because your wrestling is what you're good at, so train what you're not good at. I think Cortez has got the better scramble ability. Even if Ribas does get like a judo throw takedown or ends up, jumping on her back, I think Cortez is good enough with her wrestling to end up on top position. And it's going to be a battle of, on the mat, who is winning the fight in the eyes of the judges. So it's going to be close. I don't want money on either side of this one, but I will take the slight underdog Cortez to win a very close split decision win here. Again, I think Ribas is the more well-rounded fighter, better BJJ. She has a solid ability to get the fight to the ground. She has not fought a very good wrestler, though, and that's kind of where I'm coming to my conclusion of Cortez winning this one. Man, I don't know. It's a dicey fight. Like I said, any girl could have success striking here. It's whoever's cardio holds up and whoever ends up in top position winning minutes on the ground. So give me Cortez. I think she can scramble her way into top position longer, 2 out of 3 rounds. Okay, up at featherweight now, we've got Jonathan Pearce, JSP, versus Darren the Damage Elkins, and this is the second biggest betting spot on the card. I think JSP is a minus 450 favorite now. Again, pretty early in the week, plus 350 for Darren Elkins. So this will be kind of a brief one, right? It's hard to make a case for Darren Elkins. Back in the day, it might have been a better case. He's 38 years old now. He did wrestle collegiately, D2 in college, actually the same university I went to for my undergrad. He's 27-10 at this point and been fighting in the UFC for quite a long time. Darren Elkins made his money in the UFC being notoriously durable and having a pace that could really outlast opponents who thought they were going to get Darren Elkins out of there early. They failed to do so. He comes back, outpaces, and just outlasts them and wins the decision. He's 13-5 in decisions. He's got 9 knockouts, 5 submissions. So a pretty good resume for Darren Elkins, but lately that durability and that pace and pressure seems to be actually leaving his system. So you go to maybe like last year, Cub Swanson knocked him out pretty badly, had him on spaghetti legs from the get-go in round 1. You had him against Tristan Connolly. He actually won that fight, but still very hesitant, very awkward on the feet and striking range. So if he's not going to be able to outlast you cardio-wise, if his durability is fading, and now in this fight against Jonathan Pearce, I don't think he's going to have the grappling advantage. So that's kind of why all the bases are covered in the favor of Jonathan Pearce here. He's a minus 450 favorite. I agree with it. I mean, it's a steep line, but the youth, the cardio, the better striking now, more powerful, the pace, and the BJJ all goes to Jonathan Pearce. So he's 13-4. He's 8 years younger. Nowhere near the fight miles, and his takedown threat and high pace and pressure is just going to be too much for Darren Elkins here. I like the violence spot here. I like the under 2.5 at minus 110. I got that at. I put 1.5 units on that. And I did parlay up Jonathan Pearce here with a couple other fighters I'll talk about on the card. So, again, just the things that Darren Elkins used to rely on to get these victories, just no longer present in late 2022. He did beat Tristan Connolly over the summer. I think that was in August by decision. Very sloppy victory, but Tristan Connolly's cardio was just happened to be worse than Elkins. And Elkins had the kryptonite for Tristan Connolly. He was able to out-wrestle him, take him down time and time again. So, yeah, give me Jonathan Pearce inside the distance. Probably by round 2 he gets that sub or TKO. Up next at lightweight, we've got Michael Johnson taking on Mark Diakese. I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on this one. I think it's pretty straightforward. I tend to agree with the odds, which make Mark Diakese a sizable favorite. Minus 285 for Mark Diakese, plus 245 or so for the underdog Michael Johnson, who is now 36 years old, and that's not shocking either. I mean, the guy has been around since like the 2010 season of The Ultimate Fighter or something like that, so he had a very fast rise and a very quick decline, which I think he's still in the midst of. Mark Diakese, a little bit of the same, honestly, 29 years old, which shockingly young. He's been around for a while, but he came off the regional scene, came to the UFC as like a knockout artist, very fast mover, fast hand speed, power in his feet and his hands, and he started to rack up some losses there. Now he's come back with back-to-back improved performances over Damir Hadzovic most recently and Vyacheslav Borshev before. And it's because he's using his wrestling. He's going for a full wrestling game plan, winning the fight decisively. As a fan, not the most exciting, but as a gambler, it's fun to back these guys who have power in their hands, slick striking, but go for 8 takedowns, landed on Hadzovic, like 12 or so on Vyacheslav Borshev, and just dominate the match. No questions asked. I like it. And I see him doing this here because that's a game plan that tends to work on Michael Johnson, who, even though Michael Johnson was a collegiate wrestler, coming off The Ultimate Fighter with power in his hands, one of these wrestle boxers that ends up liking their power and now becoming a very gun-shy, hesitant, looking for that one-punch knockout threat, which he can still land in round 1, but if that doesn't come, he still has the ability to screw up the fight that he's winning, right? It happens time and time again lately. Thiago Moises, he should have won, and then he lost quickly after that. Stevie Ray, some of the same situation there. Early success, and then loses the fight. Darren Elkins, early success, gets subbed in round 2. Justin Gaethje a few years ago in a very exciting fight, but same result, right? Knocked out in round 2. So now he's coming off of a very close split decision loss to Jamie Malarkey, but his durability looked like trash in that fight as well. He got a knockdown on Malarkey in round 1, got knocked down himself in round 1, and it continued from there. So just a very untrustworthy guy in Michael Johnson. It's hard to... you're going to be sweating a little bit that he doesn't land something crazy in round 1, but after that, you're pretty much home free. And then Mark Diakese, who's never been knocked out, he's proven to be durable, and now proven to go for takedowns over and over again. Even Clay Guida was able to employ that strategy over Michael Johnson recently and come out the victor over a 3-round decision. So, he's a more high-output striker as Mark Diakese. Lately, he's a better wrestler. Probably even a better, more durable, of course, never been knocked out. So I can understand the money line here. Give me Mark Diakese pretty confidently. He gets a decision win in this bout. I like the overs in this one. Up next at lightweight, we've got Clay Guida returning to face Scott Holtzman. And this is a spot where I'm glad they're giving Clay Guida these guys that are kind of close to his age at lightweight, right? Clay Guida is 40 years old, a couple weeks away from 41. Been in the game forever. He is 37-22 as a professional mixed martial artist. An insane record, and this will be his 60th professional match. Probably his, 40th in the UFC, something crazy. Scott Holtzman is 39 years old and has not fought for over a year and a half since his knockout loss to Mateusz Gamrot. Before that, knockout loss to Beneil Dariush. Scott Holtzman is a guy who I think he got into MMA a little bit later in his career compared to most people. It was probably back in 2009, 2010. And, the dangerous Scott Holtzman is kind of behind us. That was pre-UFC. I think he's only had 1 stoppage win in the UFC by knockout out of his 5. So he's 7-3 in decisions. Mostly how he gets his wins are by decision. He's got a decent amount of cardio. I don't think it's elite like that of Clay Guida, who weaponizes his cardio. But Scott Holtzman is, a guy with just good enough striking, a nice tall man striking style, good clinch work, and he does look for takedowns and control time. A very good generalist. I don't think he wrestled before his MMA career, but, that's kind of the same game plan as Clay Guida, right? And I think Clay Guida does it a bit better. The only times you see Clay Guida struggle in his wrestling game plans are when he gets submitted by guys like his last fight against Claudio Puelles, who got that round 1 knee bar. Back in the day, he was getting submitted by pretty much everybody, right? Anybody who can snatch up Clay Guida's neck, they're going to take him out that way. Leonardo Santos, before his last loss, actually almost got Clay Guida out of there in round 1. But again, if you can't actually put the nail in the coffin on Clay Guida, he comes back with a vengeance in round 2 and round 3 and will outpace, outpressure you, and take you down and possibly submit you. But in this spot, I will ride again with the dog Clay Guida. He's a plus 130 underdog. Scott Holtzman, the minus 150 favorite. So even the bookmakers know that this is a close one. I just like the style of Clay Guida. I think is one to defeat Scott Holtzman. You're getting this Clay Guida these days that's a very risk-adverse one in his old age. You're long since those days of the Kenny Florian, Nate Diaz, Diego Sanchez wars, those brawls where his hair is flying all over the place, he's bleeding all over, just getting hit, throwing haymakers. You will get that Clay Guida from time to time, but mostly he is, sticking and moving, using good footwork and head movement, and looking for the takedown. So if he can get control time here in two out of 3 rounds, I think he's very capable of doing that. I don't think either guy is live to finish the fight here. So I like the overs, the over 2.5. Certainly the fight goes to the decision, probably certainly, and maybe I will even have a half of a unit either on Clay Guida's money line or his decision prop. So give me Clay Guida to use this wrestling style again. It is a way that people have beaten Scott Holtzman in the past, and without that big submission threat coming back his way for Clay Guida. I know Holtzman does have a BJJ black belt, but not really that active off of his back. Give me Clay Guida to once again ground out a 3-round decision here. Up next at women's strawweight, we've got Angela Hill taking on Emily Ducote, and this is a very funny matchup on paper just because of the amount of experience disparity here. You've got 21 UFC fights for Angela Hill. I believe all of those were at 115, and you've got Emily Ducote with 1 UFC fight so far. which she won very decisively in her short notice debut back in July, I believe it was, over Jessica Penne. Emily Ducote won, in my opinion, she won all 3 rounds pretty clearly. I think a couple judges did give Ducote 2 rounds to 1, but either way, 28 years old, 5'2", 63-inch reach, with a 12-6 record. She's taken on Angela Hill, who's got more experience in the UFC at this weight class than anybody. 14 wins, 12 losses. She just recently, at 37 years old, Angela Hill broke her 3 losing streak with an upset over Lupi Godinez, where Angela Hill was able to do what she does, and that was, slide around the perimeter of the cage, use kicks and punches to kickbox at range. Nobody really has to respect the power of Angela Hill. It's part of why she has a lot of losses. She doesn't have that stopping power to gain your respect and stop you in your tracks. So she can get taken down and controlled on the mat, and that's where Angela Hill usually is, sure to lose the fight. She is 9 wins, 10 losses in decision results, many of them close, and she is losing in her record in the UFC with 9 wins, 12 losses. Never been knocked out, but she has been subbed a couple of times. Now, again, the experience is just so drastic here. I'd love to take a stab on somebody with 20 more UFC wins, 20 more UFC fights in general. But we're getting plus 100 even money play on Angela Hill and a playable minus 120 slight favorite on Emily Ducote. So you're giving me somebody in Ducote who is on a 4-fight winning streak, actually captured the Invicta strawweight championship over, I think, a 5-fight UFC veteran and Danielle Taylor with one of the most vicious round 1 knockouts I've ever seen at women's strawweight. So you've got the youth by 9 years for Ducote. You've got the power. She's got very good ground skill as well, which we didn't get to see against Jessica Penne. She does have some 5-round experience. So a Taekwondo base, wrestling base, BJJ black belt. She's powerful. I think Ducote has all the tools to win this fight. And in sort of a 50-50 fighter in Angela Hill, you're going to fall either, on the side of you can beat Angela Hill or you can't. And I think Emily Ducote is right in line with a lot of the women that have beaten Angela Hill. So maybe we'll get to see a little bit more striking skill from Ducote, even more than we saw against Penne, without that threat of getting taken down. And maybe Emily Ducote will mix in some takedowns of her own here. So, I would have to have a lot more plus money to back Angela Hill, although it is tempting on paper because of the experience. But looking at the skills, give me Ducote to win this fight by decision. I do have a money line bet on Ducote, 1.2 units to win 1. Up next at welterweight, we've got Philip Rowe taking on Nico Price. Nico Price, again, this is a guy who is usually very big for the weight class, 6 foot tall, about a 75 or so inch reach. He's going to be outsized here, not stature-wise, but just measurables and limb length. 80-inch reach for Philip Rowe, making his 4th walk to the UFC, where he's 2-1 so far. He's also 6'3", so taller, longer, and 1 year younger. Both guys in their early 30s should be right at their prime of welterweight so far. Again, I think like 14 or 15 fights in the UFC for Nico Price at this point. He's gone, I think, 8 wins, 5 losses, 1 no contest. No, 1 draw, which was to Donald Cerrone. So this is a spot where Nico Price is probably going to be the zombie in this matchup. Philip Rowe, the sniper. If Philip Rowe can get a Nico Price that follows him around, and he can maintain distance on that, he could really use technical striking, and he's got power in his hands to just snipe off and keep at distance Nico Price, outpoint him for 3 rounds of this fight, and possibly finish the fight with his power. Nico Price does not have good striking defense at all. He gets hit more times per minute than he lands on his opponents on average, and that's over a big sample size of fights in the UFC at this point. Like I said, 14 or 15 so far. He's been negative on average. So Philip Rowe, so far his kryptonite has been getting put on his back in round 1 and then having to work his way back into the fight. Back-to-back second-round TKO stoppages over Jason Witt and Orion Koski. For Philip Rowe, Nico Price, not the best wrestler, but he is very good at pressuring forward, closing the distance with frantic aggression and sloppy striking, and just pushing people against the cage with his size and his height. That could happen in round 1. He could even get the takedown on Philip Rowe. I'm sure Philip Rowe is improving, working on this as a newer guy to the UFC. But that is a possibility to get the live bet on Philip Rowe after round 1. If he loses that round, maybe the odds inflate in the favor of Nico Price, and you get Philip Rowe, who seems to usually come back out with the temperature turned up in round 2. I like that strategy in this spot. Plus 120, the underdog in Philip Rowe pre-flop right now. And I like him. I'm picking him to win this fight. I think he either wins by second round TKO or by decision. Neither of these two guys like to see the scorecards all that much. Again, Philip Rowe, he had a lot of finishes before the UFC, and now he does have finishes in 2 of his 3 UFC appearances, but yet to see how he can finish high-level competition. Nico Price has been finished in 4 of his 5 losses, many of those to pretty high-caliber guys at the weight class. So yet to see about the time props. Violence, I think, is like minus 170 for the under 2.5, something like that. So the bookies agree. Not sure if that's a good look or not. I have to look into the fight more of how I think this plays out time-wise. But as far as the money line goes, I like Philip Rowe, and I do like the live betting strategy of getting him after round 1 is over, where he tends to lose. So give me Philip Rowe, either a round 2 knockout or a decision win. Up next at middleweight, we've got a sort of a fun fight between Eric Anders and Kyle Daukaus. It's fun in the frame of picking this fight apart, looking at the money line where it's at and who's going to win the fight. It was a fun exercise for me. Watching the fight, I'm not sure if it'll be that exciting. It has the potential to be very exciting or very boring. In my opinion, at 185, you have Eric Anders at 35 years old, who will be the shorter man by 2 inches with 1 inch less of reach, but don't let that tail of the tape metric fool you. He will be the more muscular and actually the bigger athlete here. He made 205, he fit right in at light heavyweight, and he can make 185 somehow as the former football player. So very athletic guy is Eric Anders. 8 knockouts, 1 submission. He has 5-5 in decisions. Very similarly, but opposite skill set, Kyle Daukaus has 9 submissions, no knockouts, and he has 2-2 in decisions. So if this goes to the scorecards for either guy, usually they're 50-50. Both of them like to get the job done, either by submission for Kyle Daukaus or by knockout for Eric Anders. Now, where this is very strange, first off, it's southpaw versus southpaw, which makes things very odd in general. But Kyle Daukaus, he does have the 6 years of youth. He does have the slick submission game, but I honestly think Eric Anders is the better striker here. He is a hot or cold fighter sometimes, but he's the bigger, stronger, more explosive athlete. And if he can get you bullied up against the clinch, which he is known to do, he is very, very strong, hard to move, and he uses very good weapons in the clinch, like the big knee that goes up to the head or to the body or to the thighs. And Kyle Daukaus has been, not only was he knocked out for the first time by that same thing from Roman Dolidze, 1 minute in, a big knee from Dolidze in the clinch knocks out Daukaus cold. Guys that also use that same strategy, Phil Hawes was able to outmuscle him on the ground in the clinch. And Brendan Allen actually dropped him in round 1 of their fight with a big knee in the clinch as well. So the clinch is where Kyle Daukaus kind of wants the fight to be. He's got poor takedown accuracy, needs to get the fight to the fence up close, and then he'll look for the takedown from there to work his BJJ magic. Eric Anders only submitted 1 time, and that was recently by Andre Muniz, who was a big guy, strong enough with good wrestling to get the fight to the mat in round 1 and dominate Eric Anders. So Eric Anders, the bigger guy, he's got more fight-ending power in his hands, and a lot more experience in the UFC in general. I'm going to take him. He's a big plus 170 underdog here. Kyle Daukaus, the minus 200 favorite. So not, astronomical odds, but I just don't see how you get minus 200, 2-1 odds for Kyle Daukaus, who is coming off of a KO loss to Roman Dolidze. Shows some sorts of weaknesses in the clinch, and if he can't get the fight to the mat, it's 50-50 if it goes to the decision so far. So both guys have very poor takedown accuracy. Both guys have great takedown defense, which means this fight might stay standing, might be a jockeying for position type of fight on the cage, and I'll take the stronger athlete in Eric Anders, who has more experience and more power. At plus 170, it's kind of a no-brainer. I have not bet it yet. If I do, it'll be either a half of a unit or a unit on his money line. I don't have a good read for if this fight ends inside the distance or not. It could be boring. It could be, some sort of exciting finish, either a submission for Daukaus, a knockout for Anders. All I know for sure is that I think this is a mispriced line, and give me the underdog Eric Anders to win the fight. Up next at middleweight, we've got Jack Hermansson taking on Roman Dolidze. Dolidze is on short notice, replacing the injured Derek Brunson, who is supposed to fight Jack Hermansson. Hermansson is now a minus 175 over Dolidze, who's moved to about a plus 150 underdog price. And Dolidze is coming off of back-to-back round 1 stoppages. We just talked about his knockout over Kyle Daukaus in the last fight, and Yeah, it was about a minute in. Need him in the clinch, flatlined him pretty much, ground and pound strikes to finish up. And now Dolidze, just about a month or so ago, beat Phil Hawes in round 1, able to actually go for the leg lock, which paid dividends this time. Usually we're clowning Roman Dolidze for attempting leg locks. This time on Phil Hawes, that actually did, without even straightening out his knee. He was able to apply torque to the knee, pop it. Hawes was compromised, could not, strike effectively or plant on it, and he got knocked out cold by Dolidze with some clean combinations. So another round 1 stoppage. Roman Dolidze is 11-1, with the one loss actually being in the UFC to Trevin Giles by a close split decision. A fight he could have easily won. So he could be undefeated, honestly, for Roman Dolidze. Jack Hermansson, 23-7 record for the Joker, who is also a grappler here with very improved striking as well. We just saw in Jack Hermansson's dominant win over Chris Curtis at UFC London over the summer. His striking looked great in that fight. Leg kicks, switching up the targets. His boxing looked really good. He looked loose, fast, relaxed. Superman punches, knees in the clinch. Pretty much kicks on, every target of the body, from the leg to the body all the way up to the head. And he was able to do a lot of that moving backwards as well, elusively. So very good defense and offense from the grappler, Jack Hermansson. So 23 wins, 11 of those are knockouts for Jack Hermansson. He does have very good ground and pound as well. 6 submissions, and he is 6-3 in decisions for Jack Hermansson. Now, Roman Dolidze, he finishes the fight more often than he does not. Again, a lot of those are pre-UFC. Now he's starting to get his stride. He does take more chances. But his striking is still very basic, although it's powerful. I think Jack Hermansson, based off of what we've seen now, being the more experienced guy, being able to pretty much match the physical stature of Roman Dolidze here, I think Jack Hermansson is going to outstrike Roman Dolidze pretty soundly, as far as I'm concerned. He does have 15 UFC fights where he's gone 10-5, so a wealth of experience. I think about 3 times as many UFC fights than Roman Dolidze. He's on a full camp. I think he's got better cardio. He's had 5-round bouts before in the past, which he's won. Again, I just think that the wrestling is going to maybe nullify itself in some aspects here. We've seen Roman Dolidze pretty open to getting taken down and working submissions off of his back. I don't think those are going to have success against Hermansson. So even Hermansson was preparing for a takedown threat in a very strong wrestler in Derek Brunson. So I do like Dolidze. I think he's very aggressive, strong, powerful, and we've seen round 1 potential finishes from him over some good competition. But I got to take Hermansson here. I actually got him when the money line dipped back down to -155. I did put 1.55 units on Hermansson to win. So I do think he wins this fight, probably by decision here, most likely. I have a... it's always tough to call a decision victory for a guy like Roman Dolidze, who is such a meathead and comes out so aggressive, but I do see this seeing the scorecards more often than not, and I see Hermansson getting the better of the top control time and the striking on the feet, so give me Hermansson. Okay, the only heavyweight fight of this 15-fight card is up next, and I'm excited for this one probably as much as the main event. Tuivasa taking on Sergey Pavlovich. Super fun fight here between 2 big knockout artists that you would expect to have a fun heavyweight scrap here. So Tuivasa coming off of the expected loss to Cyril Gane. He was like a plus 400 or more underdog in that bout against Cyril Gane. He got knocked out by body strikes, just combinations in the boxing, and stopped in round 3. Sergey Pavlovich has only been finished 1 time. His only loss professionally was his UFC debut to Alistair Overeem, by round 1 ground and pound stoppage. So Overeem actually got him to the mat, tripped him, and then just beat his face in with some very accurate ground and pound. Ever since then, Pavlovich has been on a 4-fight, 4 round 1 knockout streak, most recently against Derek Lewis, which, he was accurate and very, very fast and explosive. He's got an 84-inch reach, and he's got height and size over Tuivasa. Even though Tuivasa weighs in at the limit at 266, Pavlovich is about 10 pounds less, but way less, wasted mass, right? He's a little bit more trim for a UFC heavyweight. Again, big 6'3" frame, 84-inch reach, which one of the record reaches in the UFC of all time. Both guys, I think they have 100% finish rate under 1.5 rounds. 13 of 14 wins. knockout for Tuivasa, 13 of 16 for Sergey Pavlovich. I think all of them are under 1.5 rounds. So 100% there. That minus 220 on the under 1.5, not looking so bad when you think it's 100% so far, but still kind of scary because they could respect each other's power and stall time off the clock. We do see that happen from time to time. I think Pavlovich will be pretty aggressive, though. He has not tasted that standing, knockout cold defeat yet in his time here. He's 30 years old. Tuivasa only 29. Both are in their prime. Both still pretty aggressive. I think Pavlovich is going to know he can use his long linear punches, that nice scooping long uppercut, the jabs, the crosses, and hit Tuivasa at spots where Tuivasa, with those short strikes and the shorter reach, just can't hit him back. And when I say short strikes, I mean uppercuts, hooks. Just a lack of linear punches from Tuivasa, I think, are going to do him poorly here. I'm going to take Sergey Pavlovich. He's a minus 200 on the money line favorite. I don't want to get on that at all because Tuivasa in an instant could change the course of this fight with his power. If Pavlovich lands flush in his opponents, he rushes in very aggressively and can leave his chin up in the air, but he is accurate when he does follow up on strikes to end the fight. I got to take Pavlovich. He's got the better, just the better array of skills so far. He does have some strength in the clinch as well, that Greco-Roman base. He can show some clinching ability as well if he wants to control Tuivasa there, but I think he's more fit to just strike at range. And get an under 1.5 round knockout is what I'm calling for Pavlovich. Fight ends in KO, the under 1.5, or fight doesn't go parlayed with things. That's probably the way to look at this. Not so much picking a side here. I don't want to get in front of Tuivasa's power and watch my bet go up in flames as he's doing a shoey on the cage again. But give me Pavlovich, again, under 1.5 round knockout. Up next at flyweight, another steep money line here, which is in the favor of Mateusz Nicolau, who is taking on Matt Schnell. Mateusz Nicolau, 6-1 in the UFC. He is a minus 380 favorite over Matt Schnell, who's the plus 315 underdog. Matt Schnell is 6-5 in his UFC endeavors so far. And I can see why the money line is as steep as it is, to be honest. Mateusz Nicolau, in my opinion, has Matt Schnell beat pretty much everywhere in this fight. Nicolau is a very good submission threat, as is Matt Schnell. Nicolau is the BJJ black belt with takedown ability, good scramble ability to get back to his feet as well, and just the much better, more effective, and defensively reliable striker. Nicolau's got very good striking combinations to the body. It opens up strikes to the head. He's just a faster, more elusive guy, and better durability. Matt Schnell's chin fails him left and right whenever he tries to get in those wars, which is often. So even though Matt Schnell has that, intangible quality of fighting for your dollar, zombieing forward, he's still, you'd rather him not put himself in harm's way because his chin cannot take it. And even sometimes the scrambling on the ground is so aggressive that he'll end up getting choked out himself. We saw that against Brandon Royval not too long ago. But Matt Schnell did have a shining moment. Why we love the guy. He fought Jauregui and pretty much had a very fun comeback in round 2. He was knocked out cold on the feet pretty much. The fight was almost stopped from standing TKO. And Matt Schnell powers forward, gets some... I don't even know how he mustered the combinations he did that landed and made their mark on Jauregui. Pretty much got a club and sub victory over Jauregui with a triangle choke that choked Jauregui out cold. So very awesome comeback victory, but you'd rather not bet on a guy who's going to almost lose the fight and die in the cage before he makes your money. So Mateusz Nicolau, certainly the pick here. I think he gets the job done inside the distance. I wouldn't mind looking at the knockout prop because I think Nicolau's striking is very good in this spot, and he'll be very confident to trade with Matt Schnell, knowing he's got him beat everywhere. Nicolau coming off of an impressive victory over David Dvorak, snapping that guy's 16-fight win streak, who's a very competent fighter. So slick movement, the faster guy, the more powerful, more durable guy who can hang with Matt Schnell on the ground. So give me Mateusz Nicolau. Again, not sure what to do with a minus 380 price tag, but maybe looking at inside the distance or the knockout prop, which might be, they might give you a big plus number on submission and knockout since they're not quite sure which he's going to get. I would aim towards the knockout. I think Matt Schnell's chin is that compromised at this point. Okay, in the co-main event of the evening at welterweight, we've got Rafael dos Anjos, RDA, taking on Bryan Barbarena. Biggest moneyline favorite on the entire card. RDA is now a minus 550 favorite on a lot of books. Plus 420, the underdog price in Brian Barbarena. And this is early in the week, so God only knows where this will go. RDA, I mean, what can you say about this guy? This has got to be Brian Barbarena's biggest fight in his career at this point. RDA has not only been a threat to everybody at 2 weight classes now, but elite at those weight classes, former 155-pound champion, 11 main events. The guy's pretty much done it all, and he's 38 years old. Brian Barbarena, 5 years younger, but pretty much wearing the same amount of damage as RDA somehow, even though I think RDA is like double the amount of fights. But come on, Southpaw versus Southpaw matchup. RDA is a dangerous striker, a dangerous wrestler, dangerous submission threat. And Brian Barbarena would be looking to, take out another aged legend in a row. I mean, that's what he's been doing, I guess. The edging out the decision earlier this year, I think in March, over Matt Brown. Very close split decision there. He then knocked out over the summer in July. He knocked out former champion Robbie Lawler, aged veteran, aged legend. Now this will be another one he's looking to take out. I just don't think he gets it done. You look at Brian Barbarena's record, 11 knockouts, many of them before the UFC. I mean, he's not that dangerous of a finisher in the UFC. 2 submissions on his record. Don't let that fool you either. One of those was pre-UFC. One of those was over Sage Northcutt early on, and that was the one where Sage Northcutt got clowned for tapping too quickly by that arm triangle in half guard. So, it's 5-5 in decisions as well for Brian Barbarena. Not the best pace, not the best, style to break RDA. I think RDA's got Brian Barbarena covered everywhere. I think he'd be a big favorite even if this just stayed striking. I just think RDA's levels above. Body strikes to the legs, the combinations up top, which opens up the combinations to the face. I just think RDA is just faster, even at 38. He's on a different level. Probably has more power just because his technique is so good. But then you top it off with he's averaged, I think, almost 2 takedowns per 15 minutes. And that's over every single fight, like 30-some fights in the UFC. He's averaged 2 takedowns per 15 minutes. So most of the time he's facing elite competition as well. That goes all the way back to his debut, which was when Randy Couture was actually still heavyweight champion that night. So the experience, the better competition in his wins and losses, probably better durability, better BJJ, speed, 5-round cardio. That is why he's a minus 550 favorite here, and I think he does cruise to a decision win here. I don't know if he finishes Brian Barbarena. Hopefully he just plays a safe fight at 38 years old here, up a weight class than he's accustomed to lately. And just 30-27s, 30-26s, Brian Barbarena. I do have RDA winning every round. I do have him parlayed with JSP and one other fighter I'll still talk about on this card. But yeah, I don't have a good eye for the overs and unders. It is odd, isn't it, that we've got a minus 550 favorite in RDA, which will certainly climb as people keep parlaying him up. But the under 2.5 rounds it's plus 155. Isn't that strange? Like you would expect such a giant, massive favorite. Minus 550 means you're going to absolutely annihilate your opponent. But the over is favored at minus 185 to the over 2.5. Both guys are barely finished. Only 2 knockout losses for Brian Barbarena, only 3 for RDA. And they've both only been subbed once apiece. So I guess the numbers are looking at it that way to make that line. But yeah, I don't know. Hit up the comments if you like the under 2.5 in this one. I don't have a good eye for the overs and unders in this fight. For some reason, I just think RDA in 3 rounds is just patient enough. And Brian Barbarena, using his size as kind of some built-in defense, can hang in there. And that'll be the feather in his cap, is to last all 3 rounds with RDA. So give me RDA by domination. Yeah, that's about it for this fight. Okay, we made it all the way to the main event of the fight card in Orlando. We have Stephen Thompson taking on Kevin Holland in a potential 5-round welterweight bout. Hit the like, hit the subscribe. Let's break into this potential 5-round bout here. A very fun one. Kevin Holland making his 3rd walk to the cage as a welterweight. Stephen Thompson coming back after a loss last year to Bilal Muhammad by decision. So exciting fight because both guys are going to have a chance to show their best work as strikers, fighting another striker, not fighting a smothering wrestler the way Stephen Thompson had the losses to Bilal I mentioned, and also to Gilbert Burns before that. Both guys grounded him. Both guys nullified his karate style. Kevin Holland, basically had to make this jump down back to welterweight. after losing two smothering wrestling decisions to Derek Brunson and to Marvin Vettori. So since then, he's had two finishes, both in round two, both of them set up by his strikes, over Alex Oliveira and over Tim Means, who he club and subbed recently. So very active schedule for Kevin Holland, back to his active ways. Stephen Thompson, a little bit more of layoffs in between his fights these days. 39 years old for Stephen Thompson, 9 years older. He's 6 foot tall, so he's going to be 3 inches shorter, and 75-inch reach for Thompson. He's going to be giving up a half a foot of reach over the giant measurables of Kevin Holland. So this is the first time, I think, in Stephen Thompson's career that he's actually going to be outsized in a welterweight match. I mean, he's usually the bigger, longer guy, and that aids in his very wide karate base, his long, side kicks that he uses to maintain distance, the spinning wheel kicks he can hit you with when you don't expect it. Even the ability to keep his hands down and bait you in. I mean, he's got the long jabs and the long, counter twos that come from the hip. And, these are all techniques that require very fast timing and reflex. And at 39 years old, I think there's got to be a time where that no longer can serve him well constantly. You saw him getting hit very frequently against Vicente Luque in the first round or two of their fight. Even though Thompson won the fight, he was getting tagged on the chin frequently in that fight, and I think if any of those shots landed from Kevin Holland, who's got unbelievable power, Stephen Thompson would get knocked out. The only time we've seen Stephen Thompson actually finished by strikes was by Anthony Pettis a few years back. Again, very powerful, explosive, unorthodox striker, kind of like Kevin Holland, who gets knockouts from every angle. Remember, go watch that fight. Anthony Pettis got sidekicked into the fence, bounced back towards Thompson with a Superman punch and flatlined him out cold. So that was pretty cool. I could see Kevin Holland doing something like that. I think it would be done earlier rather than later. So, again, I'm going to disregard the Chimaev fight that just happened for Kevin Holland in September. I don't see Stephen Thompson ragdolling Kevin Holland in the first 2 minutes and then Darce choking him. But before that, Kevin Holland really has not been outstruck by many people. And most of the time, he's finishing this fight inside the distance. 19 of his 23 wins for Holland inside the distance. He does have the BJJ black belt as well. Not always the best wrestling to set it up, but sometimes he doesn't have the opportunity to really go for that, either getting out-wrestled or just flat-out winning the striking exchanges. So I wouldn't be surprised if we saw some takedown threats from Holland, but I think they would come from the clinch, which is where he's going to want to put Stephen Thompson anyways. You want to corner Stephen Thompson, not give him room to move around the cage. And, I think Kevin Holland can actually finish this fight. I'm going to call a round 2 knockout for Kevin Holland. If he doesn't get it by under 2.5, I think this will go to decision, which I still see Kevin Holland winning the decision there. Probably going to give up round 1 to Stephen Thompson, have to figure out his timing and his movement. He'll probably get out-kicked in round 1. But after that, I could see Kevin Holland getting the rhythm, getting the timing, being aggressive in round 2, and then winning some clinch battles as this fight progresses. So, again, I'm going to call a round 2 knockout. I could see him winning a decision as well. I want to stay away from the time props in this one because if you favor the Stephen Thompson side, it's probably going to go over. But Kevin Holland is so dangerous. Like I said, most of his wins inside the distance. And age may be catching up to Stephen Thompson here. So I got to side with the youth, the size, and the power of Kevin Holland. And, of course, he has that grappling edge as well, should he take the fight to that realm. So I do have a moneyline bet on Kevin Holland. I have him parlayed up with the other fighters on the card I mentioned earlier. And, I think he's going to win this fight. And it should be a very fun showcase at welterweight. Okay, there you have it, you guys. All the fights broken down for UFC Fight Night Orlando. Thompson versus Holland. Very excellent fights on this card that could be on pay-per-views if they wanted to be. So after a week off, I'm glad we get to come back to this excellent card, make some money, and keep talking fights all week together, you guys. Check out my live stream on Thursday night, 5:30 Central Time, with Cody from Blood Money MMA Bets. Hit the like, hit the subscribe, and I will see you guys then. Cheers.